Live from the Hy-Vee Studios, this is
stuff they don't
Newsradio
want you to know
1040
book is written in the same
WHO.
smart conversational style you love hearing.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Now, covering both sides of the big issues with the analysis you trust. Need to know with Jeff Angelo on your radio and the iHeartRadio app.
Right here on your radio and worldwide through our iHeartRadio app. Doug Wagner in for Jeff Angelo. Need to Know is here on a Monday. It is October 3rd, just after 10 o'clock. I shouldn't say just after. It is 10:09. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll be talking with American Commitment's Phil Kerpen here on the program. But right now, we need to bring onto the newsmaker line Dr. Franchell Hamilton joining me here via the telephone. Dr. Hamilton, good morning to you. Appreciate your time here on a Monday. Hope that the beginning of your October has gone well. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here and talk about it.
Glad to have you on. We're talking with Dr. Franchell Hamilton, the founder of A Better Way, WEIGH, Better Way Center. I see what you did there. It's a place for people to receive treatments ranging from bariatric surgery and medical weight loss to hormone therapy. She's also the author of 3 books, 2 of them previously, Transformation as a Mindset, The Journey to Changing Your Input and Your World, and The Best Diet Is. And then now the U.S. diet is deadly. 6 ways we can advocate for change. Dr. Hamilton, appreciate you talking to us. This comes on the heels of the food conference to address hunger, nutrition, and health back on the 28th of September. Unfortunately, I think you would probably agree that you wanted different headlines to come from that conference rather than the ones that were out there. But being in the breadbasket, Iowa is really the place that produces the most grain, pork, and corn in the entire world. We feed the world from here in the state of Iowa. This is something that is important to us in making sure that we can feed people. I think there are a lot of things that you and I could probably agree on. Why don't you bring us some of the statistics that you bring to us in the American diet epidemic, in which the premise of your thoughts are constructed?
Yeah, so one of the things that I talked about in writing about the U.S. diet, which obviously we've known, all the lifestyle diseases, which include cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity, has gone up, despite all these advances in medications and treatments. And so we're really looking at what are some of the causes, with obviously diet being at the forefront of these causes. So essentially, we found out in research studies that in the heart disease, the people that are dying of heart disease, 900 a day of those people dying of heart disease is purely diet related. And so it surpasses smoking now. So smoking at one point used to be the number one for obviously lung and heart disease. And now it's surpassed by our diet here in the United States.
Right.
So thought that was interesting.
No, it is interesting, especially coming from, for example, my father, he had a heart attack when he was in his mid-60s. He lived up till darn near 90 years old. But I think that the way that people ate and lived back in the early part of the 20th century is so completely different from the way they eat and live in the 21st century. People used food as fuel back in the day. Yep. I mean, that was really what happened, is for the most part. That's why I think that you saw fewer of these morbidities from cancer and from heart disease and other things. And not only, the diagnoses portion of it, but also because people used food as fuel. Do you have a spot in time where you can say, okay, I can tell you around this time, this decade, where things turned and people stopped using food as fuel and it was used in different ways as, an engineering tool, or maybe a way to, to feed the emptiness in your soul, so to speak, sometimes?
Well, it's funny you ask that, because there's a couple times in history where food kind of changed. And I talk about this in the book, And the Best Diet Is. So since the first kind of pinpoint is back during war, where people were coming up with trying to prolong food because there was food scarcity and insecurity, just because the country was going to war. So during that time is when a lot of more processed functions got introduced, right? They're like, how can we feed our soldiers but make the food last longer? It wasn't necessarily the healthiest, right? Fresh fruits and vegetables don't last very long, and they're hard to ship. So that's kind of the first era that brought in a lot of these processed foods, where we were trying to prolong the shelf life. And so that was back in the early 1900s, and then we had almost like another shift back in probably more in our decade, in the 70s, actually, 70s and 80s,
right,
where all these more fast foods started to come into play. So those were kind of the two things that kind of shifted the way we eat food, and food became comfort. Food became on the go. A lot of women, started going
convenient
to work, and so they were convenient, exactly. And so it became more processed to have a longer shelf life. And then when it became more for convenience, we eat more for a convenience, more for a comfort. And then we haven't been able to kind of go back from those things.
Right, and it's been tough because you can't put the toothpaste back into the tube at that point. I mean, if you're making Spam, you're making canned hams, you're making things like that, bologna. I mean, there are a lot of things. I remember back when I'm going to throw it on you. Back when I was a kid, we made head cheese at home, and it was fresh. I mean, literally, the guy that lived next to us worked at the hog processing plant, and my dad would trade him a case of beer for a hog's head, and then we would spend a weekend and literally make head cheese. But it was fresh, and it lasted seemingly forever because it wasn't processed. It was made just fresh right there in the kitchen, whereas nowadays, a lot of that stuff, you could leave it sit out for a week, and it'd still probably be, well, I wouldn't say good. It wouldn't be fresh, but at least it would be somewhat palatable for somebody who's not really discriminating. I do dare say that maybe one of the first solutions to making sure that food lasted longer was beer made by the Egyptians was basically sandwich in a container is what they did. They brewed beer in order to preserve the grain. Am I right about that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Like that was one of the first, to preserve it. You're exactly right. That's where a lot of this kind of stuff came from. Like, how do we preserve? How do we make it last longer? Exactly right.
I got you. This is great. It's Dr. Franchell Hamilton. She is the founder of the Better Way Center. She's the author of 3 books, Transformation is a Mindset, The Journey to Change Your Input and Your World, and The Best Diet Is, and The U.S. Diet is Deadly. This is the American diet epidemic she's talking about. She's got 6 ways we can advocate for change. Some of them I'm down with. Some of them we're going to have a conversation about as we come back after the break here. My name is Doug Wagner. I'm in for Jeff Angelo here on Need to Know. You need to know these things because it's not just about being the breadbasket and supporting our farmers. What it is, it's the idea of trying to say, okay, we've got healthy food. Why can't we get this into the hands of people in a 21st century economy that's got within the day delivery in so many places? Let's try to fix this problem. Let's talk about how to do it. Coming back here on Need to Know, Doug Wagner and for Jeff Angelo right here on this radio station and worldwide on our iHeartRadio app. Right here on your radio worldwide via our iHeartRadio app. Doug Wagner in for Jeff Angelo. Need to Know is the name of the program. You need to know that the United States diet is deadly. It is. I mean, it's just one of those things where you see obesity, you see diabetes, you see cancer, you see all sorts of issues. Bringing back on the line Dr. Franchell Hamilton with me. Author of a new book about that U.S. diet is deadly. A couple of other books, Transformation is a Mindset, The Journey to Changing Your Input and Your World. And then the other one, And the Best Diet Is, ... or ellipses. We're talking about the American diet epidemic. And Dr. Hamilton, I'll tell you mine, I was about 325 pounds plus. It was maybe 5 years ago. I'm only like 5'9", and I went to the doctor because it just wasn't feeling good. And she said, well, your blood sugar is 600 plus. Your A1C is 11.5 plus. If you had an infection now, we don't know how we would treat it because your blood chemistry is so far off. And I was literally killing myself at that point. And I made the decision. And know my father had a heart issue and a quintuple bypass at 65. I knew I had to do something about it. So I immediately went to more of what I call a raw diet, or a simple diet with far fewer processed foods. I made my food from scratch, and if I didn't make my food from scratch, I knew who made it and how it was made, rather than going for all the preservatives and all the garbage of artificial sweeteners and processing. That's really one of the things that you're talking about, is like resolving the diet problem by having people doing this. But you have it in a very unique way. I'm going to go through the 6 solutions you have. Number 1, treat food as medicine. What do you mean by that?
Almost exactly what you said. So if you have somebody who has diabetes or hypertension or obesity or any of the other diseases, including cancer, there's certain food that's going to be better for those people, for those patients, to actually treat the medical disease. And so if you have, almost like what happened to you, if you're diabetic, you don't want to give a diabetic someone all those processed food and artificial sweeteners. Right. And so you can create a food regimen depending on what the medical disease is that could actually help treat that particular disease. So that's what I mean, like as food as medicine. Like I prescribe food regimens for kidney patients, for diabetic patients, for obesity and heart patients. And I think it should be covered. And so that's what I mean by treat food as medicine. It's just as important, in my opinion, as a prescription.
Okay, that's important because you say, I'm going to go through a number of these and lump them all together. Treat food as medicine. Number 2, make healthy food affordable. 3, insurers should pay for healthy groceries and health nutrition education. And then, okay, so I'm going to take those all together. I agree that healthy food should be affordable. Why is it that organic foods are just so, they're like 20+% more, less affordable than your standard grown ones that are grown with all of the chemicals around them?
Yeah, it's funny you ask, because I actually asked that exact question. I'm in Texas, and we actually have a lot of farming communities here. And so I actually went out to one of the universities here to focus on that and ask that very same question. Essentially, it takes more time for them to make organic. It doesn't actually take a lot of the processed stuff, but because of that, it's more work, essentially, to make organic food, and that's why they charge more, is the long and the short of it.
Okay, I can understand it. I know a floor. I know that people who are a flower and garden shop, they grow their mums from shoots, and they actually pinch them back on a regular basis. It takes like 6 months. They charge more for those, so it makes sense that they would do that. But the one thing that you say that I have an issue with is you say the insurers should pay for healthy groceries and health and nutrition education. So where are the insurers going to get the money to do this? It's not just going to come out of nowhere.
You're right. It's funny you say that, because, that was part of, the Biden-Harris Franchell strategy. I don't know how well that's going to work, but one of the things that I think they should cover specifically is nutritional education. So they cover a lot of, and being a bariatric surgeon, we required diet and nutrition visits a lot. And there was a lot of times where the health insurance company actually didn't pay for them. So my biggest thing, and I know groceries may be a stretch, but I think they should definitely cover the education classes so people can go and get the nutrition, just like they would cover a provider, any other provider giving care to a patient. I think that the groceries would be a stretch, but if they cover prescriptions, which are very expensive, I think they can get a stipend for some, prescribed medical regimen for food.
I can get on board with that, Dr. Hamilton, because if anytime you were able to have a prophylactic solution rather than go into this situation, have something that's going to be a preventative, like even workouts and things like that. If, figuring out a way for people to get good workout routines and stuff like that, and good exercise. All Americans, you say, should get preventative behavioral lifestyle coverage. Is that mental or emotional, or what? We only have a couple of minutes left. Explain that, if you could, in a nutshell.
Okay, so behavioral lifestyle it's a combination of things. The behaviorals that you do every day, and so it could be mental. It's more lifestyle. They just need to understand how their behavior dictates how they live their life, how they interact with food, and almost like make that connection. Essentially, yeah.
So is it like cognitive behavioral therapy then?
Yeah, very similar to cognitive behavioral. There's also neurobehavioral, which takes a more neuroscience approach. But yeah, there are several different types of behavioral lifestyle, coverages, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. You also say programs like WIC should focus on the quality of the food, not the quantity. Food stamps should require quality over quantity. I agree on that. You would not believe the stuff that you see purchased in stores, and it qualifies as food. And the final thing you say, support our farmers. Well, as you know, sitting here on the big show station, well, we're going to say absolutely support our farmers. Her name is Dr. Franchell Hamilton. The name of the book is The U.S. Diet is Deadly. So go out, get that. And The Best Diet Is. Another one is Transformations of Mindset, the journey to changing your input and your world. Dr. Hamilton, thank you for your time. I enjoy these constructive conversations. Bless your heart for writing this book, and we certainly appreciate it, all right?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.